Good evening. My name is Maria Howell, and I'm a member of the class of 1991 and the Director of Alumni and Family Engagement. It's an honor to be here this evening to welcome you all to our conversation titled From Rodney King to George Floyd, Davidson, Riots, Race, and Trump. When I reached out to Ike Bailey, who's class of 1995, the James K. Batten Professor of Public Policy at Davidson 3 weeks ago, we had planned to do an author interview where we would speak about his fantastic book, My Brother Moochie, Regaining Dignity in the Face of Crime, Poverty and Racism in the American South, and his upcoming book, Why Didn't We Riot? A Black Man in Trumpland, which is due out this October. A week after we set it up, we spoke again and realized that while we hope to have our author talk at some point, right now Davidson needs a different conversation. So Ike spoke with a few friends and students whom he taught in his course this past fall called Race and Trump, which he says is the hardest course he's ever had to teach. They expanded the group to include a few others who have been engaging in the conversation on social media, and what we have for you tonight is a conversation among Davidson graduates from the classes of 1995 to 2020. This conversation is not about cobbling together quick solutions or making decisions. It is a chance for the Davidson community to have an open, honest discussion about race, about this time in the world, and why it looks and feels different to students, recent graduates, and older graduates. A note about technology tonight. This is a Zoom webinar platform where our panelists, who will introduce themselves soon, will be visible and participate openly and honestly. After each panelist has had a chance to speak, we will open up the comment feature located on the bottom of your screen for you to ask questions and be part of the dialogue. The panelists will try to get to as many questions as possible in our hour and a half together tonight. If you wish to engage with someone after this conversation, please reach out to us at alumni@davidson.edu. And now I'm so pleased to introduce Ike Bailey. This is Ike's second stint as the Batten Professor. He first came in 2017 when he taught a class on how to report on criminal justice issues, as well as fake news. He also taught applied ethics and journalism at Coastal Carolina University for 5 years and at Harvard University's summer school. Ike is a veteran journalist who was chosen as a 2014 Nieman Fellow at Harvard University, won numerous national writing awards, and has written for several dozen news outlets, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN.com, Politico Magazine, and the Sun News in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Ladies and gentlemen, Ike Bailey.
Welcome. Yes, but and I sort of actually need to be very, very honest. Like I should just say that I frankly don't know what to say or do right now. I'm like, and because and because like in like a very, very real way, I am exhausted from all of this stuff. And because like as of right now, like it like sometimes feels impossible. And in fact, like I can like actually go back to 28 years ago. Like when I was sitting like on like the first floor of Belk, and I'm like we were like actually watching the like riots. I'm like after the sort of like Rodney King beating and verdict, and I mean at least like in that space, I'm like I felt helpless and unseen and angry. I mean, yes, like and yes, like and like that, like it that is because like I was like the only sort of I'm like black person sitting in that lobby at that moment. I'm like and sort of actually listening to sort of like teammates and classmates like actually talking about why it is that they understood that that's in terms of that like those verdicts came back not guilty. So like here it was, like especially because like we had all seen the same thing. Like we had like actually seen this black man like actually, sort of actually be beaten for several minutes on the side of the road, cop after cop, baton after baton, boot after boot. And like after all of that, like here it was, some very intelligent people sitting there watching that and saying that they understood why that actually, I'm like, wasn't really a crime. That was my freshman year. And then so, yes, and then that, I'm like, if you actually fast forward to, sort of, I'm like 2019, when I was trying to like actually teach at Davidson on the issue of race and Trump and journalism. And it was a really, really difficult course for me. I'm like simply because like I sort of actually, yes, I sort of like actually felt like all of those feelings again that I had in Belk. And I'm like, and yes, like, and at the same time that I sort of like actually was like actually trying to force myself to not be angry, like, and also to like actually try to, at least like actually, this will actually leave space for like everyone in the class to feel uh, uh, invited into the conversation. Uh, and that even though that I knew that I'm like that, I'm like at least like actually with his election in 2016 that we had like actually reached a tipping point on race. And yet and yet it was my job to like actually make sure that I was always trying to reach out and like actually make sure that there was space for my black students and my white students and my like my sort of my Asian American students and everyone. And so and so and so like frankly like I am not sure that I sort of like actually got that right. Or yes I still like actually look back at that and I'm not certain. It's like again, like I am at this weird space now. I'm like, especially given the fact that I've been working on these issues for such a long time, and yet I, yes, I am actually at a loss for words, like in terms of like actually trying to say, I'm like, what exactly our sort of next step should be, and also like that is in part, I'm like actually from my work in journalism as well. I'm like, yes, like, and because I'm like, you sort of like actually probably like have not heard this name before. Let me ask me what his name is. Jamar Huggins in South Carolina. I'm like, he is like currently in prison for 15 years. I'm like, I'm like, and sort of, yes, and sort of like, yes, and sort of, I'm like, literally, I'm sort of like on no evidence. And when I say no evidence, I do not mean bad evidence. Like I mean literally no evidence. And yet, I mean, here it is. Uh, uh, yes, in terms of that, I mean, he is in prison, and I've actually tried to highlight uh, like that kind of case over and over and over again. I've actually spoken to the prosecutors. I've actually gone to these like these sort of like justices like in our sort of like state Supreme Court. Yes, yes I've actually tried to elevate like every single thing I mean that I can think of on that kind of case, and yet he is still I'm like he's still like actually sitting in prison for 15 years. And so like what, and that is only one case. And so like what that does, it's like what that does often, uh, 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 like it sort of like actually makes you angry and helpless all at once, and it beats you down, and it beats you way down. And then so like here it is that we actually get to May of sort of like 2020, and then it actually takes sort of like video like of sort of cops like actually literally sort of like actually murdering a man for almost 9 minutes in broad daylight in order to get people to pay attention. And so like while just in terms of that, there is like a piece of me that is saying, thank you, finally, yes, let's push forward, let's actually get to the action stage, yes. But at the same time, it also saddens me like nothing else that it actually takes something like that in order for people to pay attention. And also, especially when it comes to the Davidson community. Yes, and because we have very, very plugged in people, very smart people, very powerful people. And yet, even in our group, it is exceedingly difficult in order to get people to care. And it hurts, and it has made me angry like nothing else. And so like for me, and so like for me, and really, at least like in a moment like this, like I sort of like actually cannot get to the action stage yet. Like simply because I am still like actually grappling with like all of those emotions. Yes. And so like fortunately, yes, in terms of that, there are sort of like several other like smart people on this call, like who are really in like a better place than I am. And so like that is why that I sort of like actually really want you to listen to them more than me, frankly. Like, and also sort of that, yes, like, and also sort of like finally, yes, and then that like I sort of actually just want to emphasize this as well. Yes, in terms of that, like I sort of like actually do not want you to blindly adopt my views. Like instead that I sort of actually want you to, like simply to, at least like actually, like re-examine your own.
Thank you so much, Ike. I would now like to introduce our co-host, Dr. Tiffany Hollis, who graduated in 2004 from Davidson. Dr. Tiffany Hollis is currently an assistant professor in the Foundation's Curriculum and Instruction Department at Coastal Carolina University, where she was the 2018 to 2019 Coastal Carolina University Distinguished Professor of the Year. She's also a CCU Dialogue Fellow and a member of the CCU Access, Inclusion, and Diversity Council. Her research interests focus on the areas of equity-based and culturally responsive classroom management skills, trauma-informed education, and spoken word poetry. She is committed to diversity, equity, inclusion, and social justice, as evidenced by her ability to create equitable, accessible, and humanizing learning spaces and opportunities for historically marginalized students of color through intercultural dialogue facilitation, counter narratives, counter storytelling, and poetry. Thanks, Tiffany.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the chat. I would first like to say that my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I like to always start my conversation with that, just to let anyone know that this is a safe space if they wish to do the same. I also wanted to say thank you to Professor Bailey. As he just mentioned about holding space for his students, when he reached out and said that he wanted us to come on board, particularly reaching out to me to and help having me to get some other fellow Davidson alum join, I felt that that was important. It was important for him to give us that opportunity, because initially, as was mentioned, it was technically about his book and about his book discussion, but he felt the need to hold the space for us and to invite us on. So I appreciate that first and foremost. I also would like to just take a moment of silence, just really quickly, for those who've lost their lives to state-sanctioned violence and or to vigilantes who have thought that they were judge, jury, and executioner all at once. So we could just for a moment, literally just a couple of seconds, I wanted to acknowledge them, but I also want to acknowledge those who may have lost their lives to COVID-19, which is the other pandemic that we're also dealing with. Okay. I know it's been a heavy time for everyone, particularly if you are of color. There's been a lot going on in the news, a lot going on in general. You've kind of had to sometimes take a break and not only stay safe, but stay sane. And so for a lot of us, we see it played over and over and over again. One of the things that when they asked us to come on this evening, I wanted to be sure that I also talk about how this is impacting us, but also how being a student at a predominantly white institution also impacts students and alumni and or otherwise during this time as well. So real quickly, and I came to Davidson in 2000, and during that time, we were, and I have one of my fellow colleagues, classmates who's going to speak shortly, but during that time, we came in and we were a little different of a group, a different class. And so we always ask ourselves if students are college ready, and I think we forget to ask colleges if they are student ready. And I don't think that Davidson was ready for our particular class, but for the diversity that they were attempting to create. At that time, I didn't know that it was kind of like, it was a trial to see how things were gonna go. And so it was more of an illusion of inclusion, so to speak. And so because of that, a lot of things that we saw on campus, we can kind of resonate now with a lot of things that are going on in society in terms of mattering, right? We see Black Lives Matter, Black trans lives matter. We hear about all of that. And we, as alumni, begin to say, you know what? I do matter. And let's talk about why during my time at an institution, I felt as if there were some instances where I didn't matter, and how that the implications that it has for us as we're processing and reflecting on some of the things that are currently taking place. For example, I would like to also acknowledge some of my fellow colleagues and or alumni who wish to be a part of this discussion, but may still be dealing with some collective trauma from the experience that we had. And so I also wanted to hold space for them tonight as well and just kind of lift them up. So some of the things that we saw, not just in the community, but also on campus related to the microaggressions, the racist incidents, discrimination, harassment, either by public safety officers or officers in the community. And so when you see that play out on a college campus, and sometimes we call it the Davidson bubble, but in a sense, when you see those things taking place, you recognize and realize that technically you're not in a bubble and you're not immune, and that you are susceptible to those things as well. And so of course you have programs that assist with helping you to have that support system. For me, my support system was kind of the Davidson West Side, the Black community in historic Davidson, where a lot of families there kind of took me in. And so I was kind of shielded from some of the microaggressions on campus, because I technically had families that I could go over there. I could have a Sunday meal. I had somewhere to sleep, somewhere to study. And I never had to really, like, there were some things I was not exposed to. But when I was on campus, there was a lot of things that I was exposed to. So for example, there were some incidents that, and when my other panelists speak, they may speak to some of the same things. that took place. And so as an alum, you are exhausted, you are tired, you are disgruntled, disappointed, things like that. But then as you again begin to kind of tie in what's going on now, and you're looking at your experience during your time at Davidson and post Davidson, and you begin to ask yourself, well, what could I have done differently so that students who are coming behind me, fellow alum, current students aren't repeating some of the same things that I've gone through. So how many times have we put forth demands? How many times have we put forth things that we want to see done, and we're seeing it over and over and over again? And so it's the same thing with these protests. We're seeing this over and over and over again. And sometimes people are just saying to themselves, well, nothing's going to change. We've been there, we've done that, we've seen that, it's not going to happen. So I'm hoping that through this discussion, we can not only gauge some of the experiences that some of my fellow colleagues and or panelists went through while they were at Davidson, but also what the current situation is impacting them as well. I know that for some of my alumni friends, it's been kind of a hard transition to come back to Davidson following the 4 years, because they may be experiencing post-traumatic Davidson disorder, right? You've heard of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTDD. In that sense, I want to come back, I want to help, but I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I'm drained. Same thing with a lot of the protesters. They're like, my ancestors did it, my grandmother did it, I'm tired. Who's gonna take the torch now? And so one of the hopes from this discussion is that some of the current alumni that are on, most recent alumni, will kind of keep that fire lit and keep that torch lit. I know some of us have been complicit and I'll accept that as an alumni in terms of paving the way and being there for you. And so we are working now to kind of heal through some of the trauma ourselves so that we can be there for you. And just as in terms of helping, in terms of what's going on now with the various systems that are in place, one of the things that I'm hoping that we can also do is disrupt systems, oppressive systems, when it comes to financial, political, racial, economical, educational, so various systems that are in play. What can we ourselves do to disrupt those systemic barriers that are in play? One of the things that we tend to do is people always ask us, well, what should we do, right? Or what are you gonna do? And the thing for us is we've done what we can do. We're educating, we're informing, we're working hard. It's kind of like asking an enslaved person, how do you undo slavery, right? How do we, how can you all help me? It's like telling those who are oppressed, can you teach me oppression? Like it's backwards, right? So again, we have to have these dialogues. We have to have these courageous conversations where we're able to come together at the table and share our experiences, but realize that our differences are also similarities in a sense. Because at some point, somewhere, we've all experienced some sort of oppression, some sort of, I guess I wouldn't say dehumanization, but because that's some of the things that we did feel. And some of my fellow panelists will speak to that shortly and momentarily. Let's see. Okay, sorry. So I kind of just want to end with that and go ahead and open it up to my fellow panelists. So each panelist is going to kind of tell you a little bit about who they are. And then they're going to answer a question that kind of speaks to them personally and individually. So how do you make sense of this moment based on your Davidson experience? So again, how does this particular, everything that's going on, either your experiences on campus, your experiences off campus, your experiences in society, your experiences in certain classes that you took at Davidson, if you're currently students there, or if you're former or recent grads, just anything that speaks to your experience. How do you make sense of this moment based on your Davidson experience?
Hello, everyone. My name is Mikayla Smalls, class of 2020. So as a recent grad, I will be taking this next year to work a little bit and hopefully in the fall attend the Andrew Young School of Policy to earn a master's in public admin with a concentration in public policy. But before I go along any further, I first want to say thank you to everyone who put this chat along to talk about these important conversations, kind of held space for this. When I was first asked to be part of this panel, I did a lot of reflecting on my time at Davidson and how these past 4 years really impacted me. I thought a lot about all the events that had occurred and prompted me to structure my academic courses a certain way and to then go on and major in Africana Studies. I originally came in bio pre-med, but within a couple months, I was like, this is not for me. And I knew after joining Africana Studies department that this was the major and the way that I can impact the change I wanted to see. Within my first year at Davidson, I had really experienced a lot and it really opened my eyes. During this first year, Keith Lamont Scott was killed in Charlotte and Trump was elected all within a couple months from each other. As I stated, these were a lot of events that kind of just really opened my eyes and showed me how Blackness was perceived in the world and kind of, allowed me to see how my time at Davidson and PWI would go. Later, events such as the emergence of neo-Nazis on campus my junior year, coupled with the microaggressions I faced daily, really showed me how institutions like Davidson address concerns like this and topics of this nature. I continuously think about the ways that students created their own safe spaces to uplift and bring awareness to their various identities. The Black Student Coalition, the BSC, was my safe space. When anything horrific happened globally or within the Davidson community, the BSC was there to comfort everyone and educate the community. To kind of answer the question and implicate Davidson in its current moment of history, it is extremely important that we begin to reimagine and structure an environment that does not only progress because of the work done by Black students, Black professors, and people of other marginalized identities. We can begin to make sense of this current moment by learning from David's history and thinking about tangible ways that the administration can support Black students, faculty, and staff, because we all understand that Davidson is no exception to this conversation, despite its efforts to rewrite history and liberalize.
Mbye, I think you're next.
Hey guys, my name is Mbye Njie, class of 04 with Tiffany Hollis there. And I currently run a company called Legal Equalizer. And basically my company was built from my experiences at Davidson. It's basically helping people when they get pulled over by the police. Because like Tiffany said, our class was at that time the largest Black class that came to Davidson. We were the first class of public school students. And so we were treated as like an experiment. And for us, on-campus police harassed us, but even when we went off campus, coming back on, about 4 out of every 10 times we get pulled over by off-campus police. And a lot of times they didn't believe us if we didn't have a CAT card that we were students. They thought we were from the other side of the tracks. Like they couldn't fathom that there were that many Black kids going to Davidson all of a sudden. And so the app should be released, the new version this weekend. But basically in this time, like I said, I've been working on issues with police brutality and policing for 6 years now. And for me, I don't trust police to change. I've seen them try to reform for well over 130 years. They've had reform after reform and the same thing happens. So what my app's gonna do is gonna provide people 5 witnesses at every police stop. Just like we're at the Zoom call, when you're now pulled over, you're gonna be able to hit a text with 5 of your loved ones are gonna be able to see that in real time and record that call. So the officer's gonna have to explain to 5 people why they actually pulled you over. Because what I've seen this time is the importance of video. Video is the only reason that white America finally believes Black America in their stories. We've been telling you these stories for years and years and years and years and years. Like Davidson knows the same thing. So I mean, like I've told people, our experience as Black alumni of Davidson is like Black people's relationship to America. It's an abusive relationship, but we still love the abuser. And so when I even read the statements from like Davidson faculty and Davidson alumni, the 2 things that I immediately saw was, and Davidson itself was, you guys didn't apologize to the Black students. Like Davidson didn't say, hey, we're sorry for your experience. We're sorry for being complicit in white supremacy and institutional racism as well. Because I've talked to more Black students in the past couple of weeks than I have in the past 20 years. And the one big thing is that they're saying that we do this, we're very good at doing things like this. We have conversations and discussions, but then nothing happens moving forward, which is why when I've talked to people from the class as far back as 1982, they have the same experience as people that are in 2020, which should be a shame on Davidson as a liberal institution. And so a lot of Black alumni, if you want to get them back into the fold, we have to hear from actual Davidson themselves, hey, here are the things we're going to do that are actionable, that's going to change life for current students, and for you guys, it's going to change the disparity between, what happened to Black alumni and white alumni. And, as far as my experience and what is tied back to this time, I've had more Davidson white alumni hit me up in the past week and a half, 2 weeks, than they have in the past 20 years. What can I do? Hey, what is it? And I tell them all the same thing. You guys know what racism is. You're smart. Like, you're attorneys, you're doctors, you're brain surgeons, you're all kinds of surgeons. You figure that out. You can figure out racism. It's not that hard. The issue is you don't want to address racism, because when you do, it's going to mean you're going to have to talk to the people you love the most. You're going to have to address your family. You're going to have to address your friends. It's going to be that uncomfortable conversation. Because when you look at the facts, people bring up things like Dr. King. And I'm like, well, when he died, 75% of white Americans didn't like him. So that means 3/4 of your white families didn't like him. So you have to address that. You have to go back and address. So I was like, this isn't a Black problem. This is a white issue. This is not Black America to solve. So I was like, telling people, hey, save your mental issues, save all the stuff for yourself, Black people. I'm like, this is on us. It's a simple solution where white people have known the answer. We've been telling them for well over 400 years. So they know the answer. They can figure it out. They're just scared to have that talk. They're scared to go tell their dad, hey, why'd you go to a private school in the 60s when you were in the public school? Oh, that whole integration happened. And your parents moved you out of that school. That's why, Dad. Is that why I went to a private school now as well? Is that why when I went to Davidson, that was the first time I was around more than 10 Black people? And so these are the conversations white people need to have with themselves, because Black people have had these conversations. We know these things. We've been telling you guys. And like I've said, the other day on Facebook, it was like, I've just been shocked that what was it about George Floyd's death that was so different? What was that different? And Tamir Rice would be graduating right now. He was 12 years old. That shook me to my core. That should have shook white America to their core. And so we've had these examples over and over and over again. And so it's a simple matter. Anything that white Americans wanted to accomplish, they've gotten it done. They've sent a man to the moon. You can solve racism. You just refuse to do it because it's that uncomfortable talk. And it also is that losing a little bit of that privilege that you want to keep there as well.
Ethan, I think you're next.
Thanks. Hey, everyone. So thanks, everyone else, for sharing so far. My name's Ethan Ehrenhaft, and I'm a recent graduate of the class of 2020. I was a history major at Davidson, and I'm trying to pursue a career in journalism right now. And I was also in Professor Bailey's Trump race and US media class in the fall. And I think in thinking about the question, one moment from my Davidson experience that I've been thinking a lot about over the past couple weeks is during our freshman orientation. We got put in breakout groups, and we were supposed to discuss Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates, which had been our required summer reading. And so we got into these breakout groups and started talking, and as an exercise, we had to write down on flashcards a takeaway from the book, and then anonymously, and we passed all those around and then read them out loud. And I still remember one of the reflections was all police shootings are justified, and just that. And I remember sitting there in this kind of awkward silence with the people around me, and I was just quiet. And 4 years later, I'm still mad and ashamed of myself for not saying anything then, but I didn't. And yeah, I think if there's one thing I've taken from Professor Bailey classes over the past 3 years now, is that if you don't report on an issue, if you don't speak out in some way, if you don't do anything, you're just as complicit in the problem. And moving into my freshman year, my freshman hall there was one person of color in my freshman hall. The rest was, including the RA, was entirely white. Actually, that person of color was just there because they had to transfer from like Belk. So like even that wasn't supposed to be the case. And that was weird for me because it wasn't what I was expecting out of my college experience, but that's the way it was. And that's the way it was for the fall of 2016 for the Trump's election. And the next fall is when I took my first class with Professor Bailey. And it was definitely the most diverse class I've been in so far. And I remember the first week, our assignment was each of us had to take the Harvard implicit bias test and then come back in the next day and share our results with the class. And I remember a lot of people were uncomfortable, and we had similar kind of questions like that about ourselves over the beginning of the semester. But that was, as Professor Bailey said, that was the point, to be uncomfortable. And we have to be willing to make ourselves uncomfortable. And that was, for me, a big takeaway from the class. We also Professor Bailey talked in depth about the history of lynching, which was something I personally had never heard even discussed in the classroom, be it at Davidson or previously, which, frustrated me and angered me, but we finally talked about it. And that personally got me interested in looking at Davidson history on my own. I think coming to Davidson from the north, I knew it was the Southern institution with a bad history, but I couldn't find that on Wikipedia. There wasn't a tab on the Davidson homepage that wasn't advertised anywhere. And just reading about how we had cross burnings on campus in the 1950s, KKK march on Main Street in '86, things like that. They didn't surprise me because they shouldn't have, but they also I think it was another thing to look at those specific facts face to face. So I want to continue educating myself and learning about Davidson too. I know there's been good work in the past couple of years with campus disorientation, Commission on Race and Slavery, but I know I would love to see Davidson history, local history, Charlotte history, North Carolina history be made a requirement for all students, whether that's part of freshman orientation or a freshman seminar or something. But I know that's just one small thing, but as Professor Bailey said, we just got to keep on making ourselves uncomfortable, and thank you.
Thanks, Ethan. Jaylen, I think you're next.
Hey, everybody. Before I start, I just want to thank Professor Bailey for inviting me to do this. It's a real honor, and I appreciate it. So in me thinking about the question, I kind of want to reflect on my experience. So first of all, my name is Jaylen Thompson. I'm class of 20. I was a communication studies major, economics minor, and I played on the soccer team for all 4 years. And kind of speaking to my experience as a student athlete at Davidson, being on a predominantly white campus, but predominantly white team, at the most, I think there was 3 of us on the soccer team, 3 Black people on the soccer team at the same time. And just kind of thinking about the interactions I had with not just my teammates, but the school as a whole, in terms of, Mikayla talked about when Keith Scott was killed in 2016 when we were on campus. I remember we used to have these flagpole talks outside of Chambers, and I think everyone would get an email about it, and people would just gather around. And I think whether it was President Quillen or other students and speakers would just say their piece about how they were feeling. And I remember only seeing like a couple of my teammates out there at the time, and I didn't feel very supported. And I think we had many more after that. And so after the first one, I would text our team group and I was like, hey, like I would love to see you guys out there. And for whatever reason it was, there just never was a big turnout from my teammates. And I think when you're talking about how Black people feel at this time, I think the topic of genuine support has been really big recently in terms of, whether it's posting stuff on social media or texting your friends. I think the place of like having your friends checking on you and show that they support you really means a lot. And especially when a lot of the athletic teams pride themselves on, themes of unity and family and brotherhood. I think it's really important to think about, like, can you really stand for those things if you're not, genuinely supporting your teammates and your Black teammates specifically on those teams, because, you know, to me, I mean, that's what family is about, is making sure they're being helped through times like that. And it kind of makes me think about how I've, you know, recently been starting to see these statements being put out about, you know, Black Lives Matter from the various athletic teams, and how that's kind of been like the first time that's happened. Yet, you know, there's been previous instances where that could have happened in the past. And shout out Chris Clooney for sending out that email to the whole athletic department. It really opened my eyes. So I'm like, man, that was such a great email. He basically talked about, you know, how he was feeling in the moment with what was going on with George Floyd, but also just about how important it was for us to take steps from here. And I was like, wow, man, like I've really not received an email like that from the athletic department before, from my coaches, from others. And I think that needs to be a new normal. And it's crazy that this is the first time that stuff like that is happening. And the last thing I was going to kind of touch on is, I remember that fall we held like a Black Lives Matter protest on campus, and we were like, we marched on like Main Street, and we came back around through Chambers and stuff. And it was so weird, because I remember at first I was around a lot of, I think I was surrounded by majority white people, but, you know, we were doing the chants, and it was weird because people were like whispering. And to me, that felt really, really odd, because I think eventually, after more people got into it, people started, you know, yelling the chants and saying it with a lot of enthusiasm. But to me, I just felt really awkward and uncomfortable in that space at that time, because I was like, you know, why are they whispering? It just felt really odd. So, yeah, I mean, I really just want to speak from my experience as a student athlete at Davidson, because I think being a part of, you know, a athletic department, but also just a team, I think there's many layers to how people can support you, whether it's the faculty, whether it's the administration, or your fellow teammates. And I think that is something that we shouldn't overlook, especially right now when I think a lot of people need support. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Jaylen. Imani.
Yes, hello. Good evening, everyone. My name's Imani Bowen, class of 2010. I am an EEO program analyst for the city of New York. And, you know, when it comes to Davidson and this talk, first of all, I want to thank Ike Bailey, because the whole point of this meeting, of this space at this point, as Tiffany alluded to before, was that my man's was trying to promote his book, right? And so my man's wanted to give a highlight to his book. And now we have to take this space to talk about this, right? Which is frustrating, because this is 10 years, right? So what really brought me to kind of get involved in all this at the point was, I guess, last week I posted a status, because if it wasn't for the Rona, if it wasn't for Miss Rona, I would have celebrated my 10-year Davidson reunion this past weekend. I would have gone, I would have paid that coin, and I would have been down there singing Sweet Caroline with a whole bunch of folks and all this other stuff. And it would have been great. I was really hyped to see a bunch of people. I loved my Davidson experience. I always tell people that Davidson is where I got my voice. People always say that they appreciate my voice on social media and stuff, because I'm always getting ratchet and calling folks out. I got that voice at Davidson. Davidson made me who I am, because I was a shy, quiet kid from New York who had to break away and go all the way down to North Carolina to get away under my family's thumb. So I love Davidson with all my heart. I think back to my third Belk Butterfly crew. I am still friends with those girls to this day. We still talk about getting a cul-de-sac together and all living together in a commune. Given today's events, the cul-de-sac probably makes more sense, because it would keep my Black behind alive, right? So, but at the time it was like, okay, we're all chilling and like we all want to hang out. I think back to the amazing convos, you know, a lot of them inebriated, a lot of them whatever, on our hall at different times. with various people from all over the place, and just recognizing that the stereotypes that I had from being a Northerner, being afraid to go to school in the South, you know, weren't all that they were chalked up to be. I was also, apparently, according to record, what I was told was the first Black Davidson hall counselor, right? So I was an RA for specifically freshman students, and I was a hall counselor in 2008. And I was the first Black one, right? And that's a problem. And it was awesome because I was again on third belt, so I was back. And to this day, I love my third belt girls from 2008. I hung out with my homegirl who's a nurse up here in Brooklyn like last week. So I love my girls, and I love Davidson, and I love the time there. And I quickly realized, hanging out with folks, that, you know, they're in essence kind of two different types of white people that are at Davidson. You have the white folks who are ignorant in the sense that they just don't know. You know, I'm in New York. I went to a public school, but it was one public school in my town of New Rochelle. So I was surrounded, and, you know, by everybody, whether the classes were tracked or not. We all kind of had to hodgepodge together. I met people who literally never saw the most Black people they ever saw in their life until they came to Davidson. And Davidson has like a cap on like 40 Black people per class. So like, that's insane, right? So to that, it's like, when all this happened, I really just thought about how my Davidson 10-year reunion would be, and how exciting it would be to see all of my friends. And, you know, people got babies and stuff like that. And I want to hug some biscuit thigh babies and kiss some fat old babies and all this other stuff. But at the same time, you know, I also recognize that Davidson would have been also in the midst of what I will censor myself and say, the BS, otherwise known as the ish, that is being a student of color at Davidson. And being a student of color at Davidson is just, you are honestly put through the ringer. Davidson is a microcosm of society. If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere, I guess. But at the end of the day, why do I have to do that? Why do other Black students have to do that? And then, you know, to constantly have this continual cycle. You know, we were supposed to have more people on this panel, and Tiffany, again, Dr. Hollis alluded to it, that they're not on the panel because it's the same cyclical thing that happens with Davidson. Davidson acts like it's this great utopia. And in essence, it is kind of a utopia. We have the bubble, you know, we're very, you know, I don't know, what is it? I don't want to say segregated, but we're very closed off from the main society. How many people have jobs at Davidson? How many people have part-time jobs at Davidson? Most folks are getting just regular deposits in their, you know, in their account. You have to walk no more than like 10, 15 minutes to get to class. It's a great utopia. At the same point in time, it can do better. And so this constant cycle of like, oh, we see you, we hear you, we're there for you. It's annoying because you have not only the education, you have the smarts, you have Ike Bailey who's over here who shouldn't have to be carrying this water, but you have so many amazing other professors who are abound, who you can reach out to for you know, expertise on anything. I will say, I watched Carol Quinlan's and Anthony Fox's talk last week or 2 weeks ago, and I was a little annoyed because, again, when it comes to the cycle, something racist happens. Davidson stays quiet for a minute. Then they come out and they say, we're here, we see you, we hear you, we're there for you. Here are some amazing alumni who are doing amazing things. We know we have struggles in the past, but we're trying to get better. And I mean, I heard that when I was a freshman at Davidson in 2006. I keep on stuttering because we're a whole decade next, and I'm keep on wanting to say 2018, but we were in single digits back then, right? And so when we talk about the Africana Studies Department, Dr. Aria Holiday, that is her name, that is how we pronounce it. Dr. Aria Holiday is the woman who created that program. Davidson did not help with that. Davidson did not try to help with that. They fought. She had to create that whole program by herself. And then in 2020, we have students who are graduating with that degree. That's awesome. You know, I saw a piece in Davidson's online article about David Dennis. David Dennis is an amazing journalist and writer. David Dennis has been speaking out at Davidson since before I came to Davidson. Davidson did not listen to David Dennis. One of the lines in that article that killed me was, oh, he started a clothing line called Do I Make You Uncomfortable? Do I make you uncomfortable? I'm not going to speak for the man, but I'll speak because I was there. Do I Make You Uncomfortable started at Davidson, because when I was at Davidson, what would happen is the NASCAR training school kids see the white kids off campus, random white kids off campus, would come to campus, drink all our free beer, cause some few fights, and then leave, right? Once or twice a semester, maybe some Black students would come from outside of campus, from other HBCUs in the area to Davidson for a step show or something. That happened one night. There were literally 2 extra more Black men at a Patterson courthouse than I guess people expected, and folks felt uncomfortable. People literally grabbed their coats. They were afraid of things being stolen on our honor code system. Granted, NASCAR kids were stealing stuff all the time. So for that kind of weird shading of history is annoying. Carol Quillen herself, President Quillen, I have tried to speak to her at different events in the city. I know other Black alumni have tried to speak to her at different events. So when she says she hears, she sees, she does, who are you talking to? Because I've tried to speak personally. Other folks have tried to speak personally, and no one is listening. And there was one event in the city where there was something racist happened on campus. I don't know. The Patterson court had geisha whatever and keisha whatever, something ridiculous, because Patterson court likes to rhyme ignorance, right? And so I went to Carol Quillen to try to talk to her. She literally ran away from me. Not less than 15 minutes later, she stands at the front of a room in front of a bunch of people and gives a talk before the curtain drops and a video starts in which Clint Smith is prominently displayed. You know what I'm saying? So in the words of an amazing alumnus of, I believe, 2008, Chris Burton, he said, you know, I was kind of part of the golden year. I'm not going to be cocky with it, but Steph Curry was in my class, right? Everyone uses him. The school uses him to get money. So if you're going to use him to get money and you're going to say, okay, we stand on the shoulders of these people, Steph, Clint, David Dennis, Dr. Hollis, Mbye, all these people were taught by amazing professors, amazing teachers who were not supported, quite honestly. I think of Dr. Fairley, I think of Dr. Flanagan, I think of Eve Valise, I think of Dr. Delane Compton, all these amazing professors who brought different ideas to campus who weren't supported, but who were quickly grabbed soon as something racist happened in order to make everything seem a little bit better. So with all that being said, I say this to say that Davidson, we're at a precipice in time, right? People are tired of waiting. People are tired of having the same conversations. And so what we want to see is action. What is Davidson going to do? The reality is that Black students are forced to deal with the ish from freshman year. They have to deal with the ignorance, whether the ignorance of just not knowing because, you know, folks were just sheltered and white people were just sheltered and that was their environment, and the ignorance of just not wanting to know. How are we going to deal with that? I leave Davidson understanding white people to various lengths of ignorance, right? To understanding, okay, the well-meaning white folks who just never really woke up until the 11th black man was kneed in the neck and killed on camera because Emmett Till died in 1955. So we don't need to see people on camera dying, right? Breonna Taylor is right out there. No one's talking about her. As Black women at Davidson, I can't lie and say that that is so apropos. That, you know, that Black women are not really talked about and are seen as this, that, and the third. And so to that, you know, this idea that Black students have to be responsible for fixing this, Black students have to be responsible for this education. I mean, even some of the talking points, I saw a tweet talking about campus police. Oh, well, campus police has always abided by the 8 can't wait. When has that occurred? Davidson Campus Po has always, you know, has always, I'm looking at him, I see you look, Davidson Campus Po has always segregated. The fact that literal NASCAR random folks off campus can come on campus and have an easier time getting on campus than a legit Black student is a problem. And so I'm tired of the talk. I have a whole bunch of friends. The awesome thing is I've probably deleted a lot of the ignorant folks on my social media because the white folks on my timeline have been pretty awesome. They've been heeding the call. They've been doing the work. Folks are ready. So the idea is, or the thing is, what is Davidson going to do? You cannot leap yourself or create yourself as this bastion of education while also being like, well, we don't know what to do about racism. You cannot, you know, 2 a.m., you know, I don't know, random TV infomercial racism and also tout yourself as an amazing institution. So I will end and say that all the Black folks and all the amazing Black students, all the amazing Black doctors that Davidson likes to tout in its alumni page when it comes to getting money, when it comes to touting for staff, if you're gonna hit him up that much and use that dude's name that much, you might as well give him his degree. And at the same time, if you're going to tout and hype up all these Black students and Black alumni, practice what you preach. Let's not be ridiculous about this. This isn't a dull blade trying to cut a tomato. This is deliberate inaction. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you so very much, Imani. That was awesome. I think Addie is up next.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to first of all say thank you to everyone who made this conversation possible, and thank you to Dr. Bailey for reaching out to me and inviting me to be a participant in this. I took Dr. Bailey's class, Trump Race in U.S. Media, along with Ethan and Jaylen and Mikayla in the fall of 2019, this past fall semester. And it was definitely an extremely eye-opening class, as well as touching on topics that I had covered in some other classes, but we never really got to dive into. It was the most diverse class I've ever been in, which is sad considering it took my last year at Davidson to get to a class that was about, you know, half Black, half white, with also some Asian American students and other people of color. But again, most diverse class I've ever been in my entire life and probably will ever be in, which is really unfortunate. But Dr. Bailey really, you know, at the beginning stressed that this was a class to have uncomfortable conversations in, to be uncomfortable and be okay with being uncomfortable. He did such an incredible job of facilitating conversations and also talking about things that were happening at Davidson. You know, there was a lot going on in the world at that time. It's hard to think back to Trump's impeachment because so much has happened since then. But also on campus, you know, we experienced some students dressing up as prisoners in blatantly racist costumes and never really heard a response from the administration about that. And we were able to talk about that in his class. And, you know, I was able to talk about it in some other classes too. But As other people have touched on, it could be upsetting when it feels like the burden of education and discussion is falling on the Black students and Black professors at Davidson, with the administration sometimes shying away from these conversations. So I'm glad we're doing this now, but again, talking can only do so much. I'm class of 2020 grad, I forgot to mention that, and a history major at Davidson. I feel really lucky that I was able to be a history major, and have been reflecting on that a lot the past few weeks and talking about that with some of my other history major friends who recently graduated, and feeling like it's sad that our education system fails us so much when it comes to history, and that I had to become a history major at a really wonderful institution like Davidson with a very strong history department to learn the true history of this country. You know, we teach a very whitewashed master narrative in our schools, and I could rant about our broken education system, but I'm very grateful for what I got at Davidson, and grateful for a lot of professors in the history department who really tried their best to center content on the Black experience and the experience of enslaved peoples, reading works by Black scholars. You know, one of my professors that comes to mind really stressed that, but again, you know, not every professor did that, and every department definitely has a long way to go. I think in terms of reflecting on Dr. Bailey's class, you know, Davidson is an educational institution, and I feel really lucky that I got to take classes like Dr. Bailey's class, my history classes. I took an impression in education sociology class that really informed me and makes me feel, as a white person, a little more equipped to have these conversations and do self-reflection and wake up from ignorance. But not everyone experiences that. And it's sad that even I've had conversations with friends from Davidson that feel like, you know, I wasn't taking these classes, I wasn't having these conversations, and I'm upset about that. And, you know, part of that's on them for not taking courses, but part of it's on the school as well. You know, a lot of my friends and I have talked about, if Davidson is an educational institution, you know, why aren't we requiring some of these courses? You know, I'll just say right now to any current students who are watching this, please try to take courses that talk about race and racism and the history of it and how we're still dealing with it today. You know, Dr. Bailey's classes are really wonderful and will give you a place to have these conversations and be uncomfortable and learn from them. But, you know, obviously I'm not in any position to give actionable steps, but, you know, I hope the college is really thinking about, if we're an educational institution and if we say we care about these issues and helping our students of color and our professors of color who are doing some really incredible work and research, you know, freshman orientation and freshman year are great times to require students to take courses and required to learn about the history of Davidson. You know, a few students recently put together the Disorientation Tour, which walks students around campus and highlights all sorts of different racist incidents that have happened on campus, the history of people who started the institution and ran it, who owned slaves. You know, as we know, Chambers was a slave owner and involved in the slave trade. And, you know, maybe that's a tour that I think that's a tour freshman students should take. And, you know, we like to obviously talk about the fun things and the exciting things that Davidson has done, but if we're going to be totally honest and transparent, we need to talk about the not so fun and not so nice things that, you know, Davidson has been a part of in its past. And it's not, you know, I think one of the shocking things that I learned from that disorientation tour was a lot of these things were happening not so long ago. You know, not everything is from the Civil War. A lot of things were happening very, very recently in the past few decades. So, you know, I think any type of call to action I would have for Davidson and any current Davidson students is, you know, and alumni, is to lobby for Davidson to require courses, you know, have freshmen take a course on racism and discuss Davidson's history, discuss the country's history, discuss current issues, you know, read works by Black scholars, and, you know, give Davidson students the tools to learn and wake up from ignorance. There are so many amazing professors at the school who are equipped to teach this material, such as Dr. Bailey. You know, I actually said when I was talking to some of my friends, you know, I took this amazing class. It should be a requirement. Even if Trump is voted out of office in November, these issues aren't going away. and these conversations have to continue. So, you know, in terms of my Davidson experience, I think it was an educational one, and it's just one I've been reflecting on, and also realizing that not everyone has the same experiences. Obviously, I didn't experience racism firsthand, but, you know, there was a lot of times that I witnessed it, and a lot of times I definitely should have spoken up, but really just trying to take my education. And I hope that Davidson, you know, advertises these classes more, makes them requirements, changes the structure of freshman orientation, and really uses the tools that are easily accessible to them to create, for lack of a better word, woke student body who they can send out into the world to hopefully make a big difference, because there are so many amazing students that already are, and professors who can help teach these, you know, teach this material and give students resources to learn from. So thank you again for having me on this chat.
Thank you, Addie. That was great. So our last panelist, we have Maurice Norman. So we're going to open the floor up to Maurice, and then after Maurice speaks, I'm going to come back, and then we're going to open up for questions.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, my name is Maurice Norman, class of 2020, like so many of my peers here. I was in English and Africana Studies double major during my time. And in response to everything that's going on right now, I could say two things. I've been asking my folks, a lot of my loved ones, where are you finding your peace right now? And my response to that question is in conversation with my folks and sharing two bits from those conversations. Justice is for the living, and once dead, injustice has already succeeded. And the challenge and the task of being Black is keeping ourselves alive enough to see justice. And the second thing, I could sum up my Davidson experience by a small hut behind Belk called Sparrow's Nest. It used to be a slave cabin, and it was renovated and is now a sustainability office. And we walk around these cabins every day, we walk around these sites every day, and we're not in touch with the immense violence that just lies beneath the surface of Davidson College. And being a student of color on this campus, being a Black student on this campus, we're tokenized to an extent where we feel hypervisible and disregarded at the same time. We're tasked with carving our safe spaces and using our own emotional labor while trying to, one, just develop from young adulthood, from being a teenager into young adulthood. We're tasked with creating our own safe spaces, which can be incredibly taxing when there's no infrastructure in place to uplift those efforts or supplement those efforts. And I'm at a point that was echoed, and I echo so many people here, where it's like, yeah, like we've had panels, we've had conversations, and I'm actually an employee of Davidson College right now. I'm the Digital Projects Fellow, spearheading an initiative called Stories Yet to Be Told, Race, Racism, and Accountability on Campus. And I think about the immense irony of my position right now, because now Davidson College is in a position where almost scrambling to respond to these many, alumni voices coming and saying, we want more. And now I'm finally behind the veil almost, and I'm seeing that the administration, sometimes it's not ill intent, sometimes it's just they are ill-equipped to really care for and really support students of color on this campus. And I'm tasking myself with understanding, how can I, in my next 1 to 2 years here, be a medium or be a vessel and be a tool to better serve people? Because I graduated a month ago. I know what it means to be like a student of color on this campus, and I'm trying to maneuver those experiences into the next stage of my life. So that's why conversations like this are valuable for me, to just engage in the acute listening that I need to really understand what's next, and coming to an answer in conversation with other people. So with that, I'll end my little blurb.
All right, so thank you to all of the panelists. I also want to really quickly say congratulations to those of you in class of 2020. Yay, woo! All right, forgot to do that mini celebration really quickly. So before we move into our question and answer session, which the chat should be open shortly for questions, I just real quick want to just piggyback off of some of the things that everyone was saying and that I kind of took note of. So right now we're in what is a moment of reckoning for Davidson. It's time for Davidson to realize that even though, again, it may not have been the intent, but the impact has been kind of forceful in such a way where Davidson's had to reckon with its past, with its present, and as well as potential future students who are coming in, right? So one of the things that we'll say as we begin to wrap up, Davidson's gonna have to make room in terms of diversity on their boards, diversity in diversifying thought, diversifying actions, diversifying policies, diversifying pedagogy, diversifying the culture and the environment, the climate in which the students are in, and then also no longer saying, we'll wait, we'll get to that. So how much longer? It's been decades. Like you have panelists on here from the 90s up to now, and some of the experiences are still the same. So we can't any longer say, not right now, just hold on, we'll get to you. We'll address that when we cross that bridge. Right now we have to continue to build those bridges while we have a chance instead of burning those bridges. So it's a moment of reckoning, and we're kind of done with the performative empathy, the performative antics. We're seeking some action. So hopefully the questions that we get that come through the chat, and also as we begin to end the conversation, and Professor Bailey takes back over to ask us what are we going to do. All right, so we're waiting on questions. Questions are now open for anyone who has questions that they want to field to any of the panelists. It can be a generic question in general, or you can say this question is for a particular panelist in particular. Oh, I'm sorry. And also, thank you all for sharing your stories. Thank you for being brave. Thank you for being courageous. And most important, thank you for being authentic and transparent and just sharing your experiences. It means a lot to be vulnerable, put yourselves out there and to share and to speak your truth, but also walk in your truth. So I appreciate that.
Well, yes, and I'm gonna see like one question, I'm at least about sort of I'm like Dr. Quillen, I'm like, and that she is listening right now, and also like so like at least for me, yes, and that she actually sort of like she represents I'm like Davidson sort of like real progress one. Yes, like, and because sort of, at least when I was here in '95, yes, in terms of, I'm like, and then that, at least like up through that point, that like every single president we had, of course, was like a white male. Yes, I was there with, sort of, at least like sort of, like Dr. Kirkendall, et cetera. And also that, like my sort of, my class from like 2019. I'm like, at least like actually with that diversity, I'm like in that class, like frankly, sort of like actually was not possible in 1995. I'm like, and so that's it. And so like what I like often struggle with, I'm like during these kinds of conversations, etc. I'm like, is to like actually try to balance, I'm like, at least like the real need, I'm like in order to like actually highlight. Yes, in terms of like all of the issues that we still need to be resolved, et cetera, and also sort of like actually trying to make sure that we, I'm sort of like also like actually talk about some of the progress as well. I'm like, and because like, yes, I guess that I fear that if we don't, yes, and then that, I'm like, it like actually. It actually makes it easier for sort of a sense of helplessness to set in, and that that is definitely not something that I want to see happen. And also, yes, like, and also that like I want to stress, really stress, yes, in terms of like how important at least that like these sort of voices like of our sort of like recent grads are yes, like, and because yes, because and then that like they have seen so much recently, like, and like actually haven't gone through so much. It's like therefore yes, I don't want them to like actually feel as though, yes, in terms of that, like a voice like mine is more important, etc. And so like therefore, yes, and so like again, yes, I think that we actually have to like actually be in this very like uncomfortable space. I'm sort of like whereas that we like are always going to say that like we actually must get better. Like especially the fact that Davidson is elite, and so therefore, like we actually should expect only the best. And like and also sort of like on the issue of race as well, like only the best. That is because we are Davidson, and so like therefore, uh, um, so like therefore, yes, and then that like we should like never ever have an excuse to say that like well that we have done enough. Like we have moved like from 1995, at least to now. Yes, me, but that yes, me, but that like it is important, at least for us to like always, sort of like actually push for more.
Okay, so there is a question, and there are a couple of questions that I'll kind of condense that can be answered probably by some of the faculty, the staff members who are on the call, as well as older alumni. So how can Davidson help others recognize their prejudices, their biases, and how can they be made aware of them so that they can be a part of the change that needs to take place? How can we prepare them to have the talk? And what should their roles be in disrupting and ending systemic racism and institutional racism?
I'll take that one real quick. Like the issue is Davidson already knows the issues. Like we've been talking about this. Like that's what we've talked about, you know? Like for instance, we've literally had every class of Black students that has been at Davidson has talked about racism. They know the issues. Tiffany, you know our class wasn't silent about racism. Like we were loud and out about it. I had a radio show where I called that stuff out. Like we had faculty that knew about it, alumni knew about it, current students knew about it. You know, I mean, the students that were with us knew about it at that time. So they know exactly what's going on. Once again, it's that whole, oh, we don't know what to do. No, you do know what to do. You have to let go of that privilege and you have to have that hard talk, seriously. And I saw another question where it was about talking with your grandparents and stuff who may have racist beliefs. So a lot of times is you put the onus back on them. So when I talk to older people and they talk about people rioting and looting right now, I ask them what was happening in 1968 in Detroit and Watts. You know, I asked them what happened in 1965 then. I go back and I ask them what happened in 1950s in certain cities, and 1940s where they've been rioting. There's been every decade since the 1890s, there's been a riot in America over police beating up or killing an unarmed Black person. Every single decade. It's like clockwork. So if your grandparents or parents are complaining now, ask them why they didn't listen back then. Ask them what they didn't hear back then. Because we were loud and clear that they loved Dr. King. They could have either heard from Dr. King or Malcolm X. They could have gotten the Black Panthers or they could have gotten SNCC. You know, you had your flavor. You got your violent, you got your nonviolent. Like, that's the thing when people complain about protesting and all this. Like, white people didn't agree when Black folks were sitting down at lunch counters. Like, when they were at Woolworth, they were pouring drinks on them. So it's not about how we protest. It's about why we protest. And it's that one to always ignore the actual root of the issue. Because the root of the issue is going to let you know, hey, members of my family had to deal with this kind of racism. All the lynching that's gone in this country, all that, a lot of white folks in their family have family members that have participated or been at those things. Lynchings used to be public events. That's how the word picnic came about. So in your family, and that's the problem with America, we've codified history so much because we want to deal with white fragility where we don't hurt your feelings. That's why we argue about the Civil War when they themselves wrote themselves, yo, this is about slaves. Black folks ain't as good as us. They told us themselves they were that brave, but you're like, no, it's about this, it's about that.
So, like, it's so much stuff that we know about, but white folks don't want to hurt their feelings with the kids. Like, that's the Daughters of the Confederacy. The whole, hey, the Civil War is about states' rights. What rights were they fighting for? To own slaves. And it's the same thing. We don't talk about history in unapologetic terms in America. We've sugarcoated it. We've watered it down. We don't learn about Black Wall Street. We don't learn about the Atlanta race riots. We don't learn about the race riots in Wilmington. You know, we don't learn about all of these massacres. Why? Because it's embarrassing to white America. And that's why this racism keeps going on. They know it's been going on, but they're, oh no, this is new. No, it's not. All your parents or grandparents, somebody in your family saw a picture of Emmett Till. Somebody in your family was around when Dr. King was getting beaten down and sprayed, you know, and all that stuff. So it's not that hard of a thing for Davidson. It's the same thing we've talked about. That's why Black alumni is frustrated. Davidson students for years on years on years have been saying, this is racist. Here's what you can do to improve our lives. Here's what you can do to improve the lives of alumni. And Davidson's response is, awesome, we hear you, let's do another talk. And that's their response every time. And now we're fed up at this point in time, like America's fed up. And so what a lot of people want is they want to talk with Carol Quillen. They want to talk with Board of Trustee members. They want to say, hey, what is Davidson going to do so when we have this issue in 2, 3, or 4 years, which is going to happen, we're not going back to these same panels and doing that. Now we have something in line where the class of 2023, 2024 can say, yo, my experience was different because these things were set in place where I didn't have to deal with that stuff.
Thank you, Mbye. So there are plenty of questions that are being fielded in the chat right now. We will not be able to get to all of the questions, of course, because we do want to honor everyone's time. And we also do want to be able to give everyone the platform, though, to answer those questions that we feel need to be answered. So if you do have questions and we don't get to them tonight in the next couple of minutes that we have, you can email them to alumnievents@davidson.edu. Am I correct, Maria?
That's good. Alumni@davidson.edu is probably.
Alumni@davidson.edu.
We'll also take some of these. Thanks.
So that we can continue the conversation if your questions aren't answered. So I saw a question about curriculum. I wanted to touch on it, then I'll let Professor Bailey touch on it as well. And then there are a lot of questions, but this one has come up with curriculum and with what can Davidson do. So I'm currently an assistant professor of foundations, curriculum instruction, and I teach a schools and diversity course for our aspiring pre-service teachers, or pre-service teachers who are aspiring educators. And in my diversity course, I cover things like power, privilege, oppression. I also cover white privilege. We have to center whiteness in order to talk about the other isms and to talk about how many have been oppressed by those isms, right? And so we have those courageous conversations. I have students who cry. I have students who literally have to take a minute and atone. They say, well, what can I do differently that my grandfather did, or that and we have those conversations. They are invited to my class, back to my office, and we have lunch. We have whatever they need, a coffee. I don't go to Starbucks, but a coffee so that we can chat and just talk through. I even had one student who literally in the class told me, this is a class of 30 students, 28 white, 2 Black, a young man with the Trump hat on, Trump sticker on his laptop, who said, my pawpaw told me I'm not going to learn anything from you because you're Black and you're a female professor. You don't know diddly squat. So what I did was I extended grace to that young man. I handled it in such a way that the students in the class were just like, oh my, wow, I couldn't have handled it that way. But again, Davidson has prepared me for so much. So when you have had those curveballs thrown at you as a student at Davidson, and then as someone who was born in the North and moved to the South, you kind of know how to deal with racism when it confronts you head on. And that was head on in front of 30 students. And as a professional that I am, I had to handle it in such a way where the students understood that it's okay to disagree, but we have to call people in instead of calling people out, right? And so that's kind of what I do. I also look at it from a humanity and an equity perspective, while getting them to, again, admit to their own biases and their own prejudices. I get them to think about, well, what can I do? What can I commit to doing so that I am no longer complicit in the behaviors of my family, the things I've been socialized to believe, my ideals, my ideologies, my values? What can I do differently to be the change I want to see. And so with curriculum as the question that came in, the requirement for an ethnic studies class would be great. The requirement for a diversity class would be great. But again, we have to have the truth being told in those classes. We can't look for a curriculum that's already out there and say, ooh, this one looks like it's evidence-based, let's use this. We have to be responsive to the needs of the students at that particular institution at that particular time. And so that's kind of what I do. When something happens in society, we will stop and talk about it. We will address it. It's not in the curriculum, but we will address it. And I think that's what a lot of professors have to do, be willing to have those tough conversations and to have it written on their evaluations. Okay, and that's fine, right? And to be willing to take those shots and say, that's okay, that's quite all right, you know. But then those 2 or 3 comments does not quantify those comments by the other 28 students in the class who talk about changing their mindsets, or who go out and create social justice clubs, or go out and create different programming so that they can disrupt the oppressive systems. So again, we have to be willing to do those things. And so I'm going to turn it over to Professor Bailey, because I know a lot of the things that he does in his class, particularly with the topics that he covers, the very difficult topics that he covers. He may also have some insight as well in terms of curriculum and what Davidson can do.
Well, yes, and also, of course, so know that we have sort of actually get that title on time as well. I just wanted to say like that quickly on that is that it is the same kind of fight that I have actually within journalism. That is because like sometimes that this issue is like actually treated as a side issue instead of something that is really foundational, sort of actually from the sort of foundation of this country, and in every single industry, in like every single sort of field of study, that like it is important for sort of like students to like really understand this history, and also sort of how to think through race. Yes, like, and sort of even sort of like in like the field of sort of like medicine, for instance. Yes, in terms of yes, and then that like actually during the sort of Jim Crow era, for instance. Well, yes, in terms of that, at least when sort of like Black people were like actually dying at like really really high rates. And sort of in large part simply because of like Jim Crow laws, which like actually made it really really difficult for them to in order to get health care. And so yes, and then that like what sort of like many doctors and also sort of like officials did then was to actually these like actually claim yes, in terms of that it only meant that Black people were like actually going extinct. So like instead of actually dealing with the issue itself, we actually sort of actually push it to the side. We also like yes, and so like for me, yes, in terms of that this is an issue. Yes, in terms of that, every single teacher sort of actually really needs to be sort of like well versed in like under their field.
Okay, so it is 8:30, and what we want to do is again honor everyone's time. We are not going to log off if it's okay with the panelists and Professor Bailey, for us to kind of hang on for a few more minutes so that panelists can answer the questions that most resonate with them, and so that their voices can be heard as well. Is that okay if we give about 15 more minutes to the conversation, to the discussion? Panelists, are we okay with 15 more minutes? Professor Bailey?
Yes, I'm fine. Okay.
All right, so we're going to just kind of answer a few more questions that are coming through. Panelists, if you can kind of feel through some of the questions and see if there's one that resonates with you that you feel your voice can and will address. We can do it that way. I also just wanted to say real quick that Professor Denham at Davidson did say that there are some things that are being done. They've got some work to do, but there are some things being done in terms of the curriculum through the humanities department. And so that's greatly appreciated. That's definitely progress. We appreciate your comments, Professor Denham. Thank you so very much for enlightening us and letting us know that it's a start, but we do have a way to go. All right.
I just saw there was a guy who posted, or someone who posted, that they had 2 Black hall counselors in the 90s. So never mind what I said before. But there was someone who asked about what can current Davidson students do now who kind of feel hopeless on campus. And I'm just going to say, buck the system, keep being an irritant in folks' side, keep on pushing folks. I know that there was a statement released by faculty and professors that was like an anti-racist statement that some faculty and professors signed. I have questions about that statement because 1, not all the faculty signed it, and 2, some of the faculty, just looking at like the first 10 names alone, it's like, all right, that doesn't mean anything. So I guess figure out, where the discrepancies lie in what the school is saying versus what it's doing, and push it on that end. For alumni, I've talked to some alumni earlier today, shout outs to Peter Baki and other folks who were talking about potentially withholding funds and donations until Davidson has a legit process or procedure for how it's going to deal with bigotry and discrimination on campus. So a lot of people are writing letters to Dr. Carol Quinlan. So hello, if you're on the call. And so, yeah, keep it up.
There's one question about accountability coming from all departments and not just departments such as Africana Studies. And then there's another question about how many Black professors there are. And I don't have that exact answer, but I can say that there are not enough Black professors. And there are some departments that don't even have 1 Black professor. So it's just, this is one of the things that we can demand as students, as alumni, for the organization, for the school to do. Back in '87, Project 87 was a thing where students came up with a list of demands that the school could implement to make sure that Black students and other voices from other students could be amplified. And this is something that has not been met yet. And some other things, tenured. A lot of the Black professors don't have tenures. Their salaries don't match or even equate to the salaries of some of the other professors. So these are just some other things that Davidson, I would hope in the near future, next week, would begin to address to make sure that the responsibility is not only on the Black professors. I know a lot of students from the STEM majors talk about how some of the issues of racism, race relations aren't even being addressed. However, there's such thing as the Black maternal mortality that affects Black women and Black people, but yet that is not being addressed. So racism, race relations is not only on Black professors and the Africana department, the any other minority discipline, it's on all professors because these topics can be applied to all disciplines.
And Dr. Quillen, I'm gonna definitely give you a shout tomorrow so we can talk about some of the things I'm hearing from some of the Black alumni on things moving forward. I saw a question from Michelle about the value of Davidson degree for Black alumni compared to white alumni. And I wanted to speak to that personally on kind of our level. So that's something we have to work on as well. So for me at Davidson, I thought I did almost everything Davidson wanted a student to do. Tiffany would know, like I was like union board. I was activities task council. You know, I was traveling to every athletic game, away game. I was the fan that went to almost every women's soccer game, men's soccer game, basketball, you name it. I was there. You know, I was a mascot, you know, like you name the Davidson stuff, I was there, you know. Walked on soccer team, did club soccer, did all of that stuff. And I graduate,
And I'm looking at all my classmates, and somehow all through this, I still managed to keep a 3.0 GPA. Shout out to self-instructional languages. They still got that, Davidson. Y'all take them self-instructional languages. but I still kept the GPA. But then when I got out of school, like, I couldn't find a job anywhere. You know, like, so I had to end up going, like, doing door-to-door sales. And then my Black classmates who had even higher GPAs are sitting here finding, like, remedial jobs that you're like, you went to Davidson for that? You've got people that are doing, you know, stagehand work. You've got people that are doing camera work. And so when you have that, and I'm looking at like some of my white counterparts who had less than a decent GPA, and they're coming out of Davidson and they're immediately going into banking or somewhere else making six figures or a high amount of salaries. And also, as you know, our class might be different, but you know, for us, we didn't have that network. Okay, here's what you're gonna do when you graduate from Davidson, what to do there. So that's one thing that I know as a Black alum, and speaking to a lot of other Black alums, we don't have the same support coming out of Davidson that the white students do. So our degree doesn't mean the same. Like, I know too many Black alums that literally left Davidson and had to go do like hard blue collar jobs that you didn't go to Davidson study for as a liberal arts major, you know? And so that's some of the things we need to address as well.
One thing that I would like to respond to is this question by Nathaniel. He says, "Hi, I'm a Black man. I have dreads. I'm pretty tall. I'm dark skinned. I'm scared about going to a college and as deep of the South that I've ever been. So I'm wondering what I can do to prepare myself for that particular flavor of racism and profiling on and off campus." And the first thing that popped into my head was actually something that Professor Bailey here said in one of his lectures. He said, "Know when to fight and know when to dance." And every day down here, like, I live in Davidson now, and I see my neighbors, like these little white folk, they turn their heads full 180 looking at me because they don't think I belong in this neighborhood. Like, they're like, who is this man walking around with his locks down to his neck in this neighborhood? And it's something you have to leverage every single day. Know what you're going to respond to and know how you're going to keep yourself sane, how you're going to keep your mental strong. I would say get you a good group of friends. Try and build a real substantial and meaningful community, because that's one of the only things that has gotten me through like the Stride program. So some of the people who I've met in there are the folks who have held me down. I've broke down with them. I've cried with them. I've laughed with them. Turn some of these racist experiences into jokes just so you can get it off your back and move on. Like, lean on your internal community, but also what you're doing is important. You're acknowledging that you are going to have to face racism and profiling down here. And that's something we need to normalize in these conversations. We need to, we're not going to be able to fix the mentalities that have seeped into the town of Davidson, but what you can do is prepare yourself for them. So I think you are taking the first step just by acknowledging that it's going to happen, and know that you're going to need a support system to get through that.
I wanted to address a question. I said, being a Black student athlete, how do I bring up the topic of racism and how I feel with my team when we are a 90% white team? Man, I can speak to that. I remember having to have a conversation with my whole team about using the N-word, and that was uncomfortable. We were all sitting in my locker room, and everyone is kind of silent, and it's just you speaking. And it just takes a lot of courage. And if it's something that you feel like you can't do by yourself, which I don't blame you, it's a tough thing, then I think you turn to your friends, the people who you call your friends. If they're truly your friends, they'll help you through the experience, they'll support you through it, and they'll stand by you when you bring it up to your team. And then what I think is another awesome thing, once again, shout out to Chris Clooney, having a Black person who heads the athletic department is huge, in my opinion. Chris is super open. You can go have a conversation with him anytime, and he'll talk you through how you think, how he thinks that should work out, and he'll give you support you need, and will have that power to be able to support you. So, bottom line, it's a tough ask of anybody. No one should really have to do that, but if they're truly your teammates and they're truly your friends, they should be the one listening anyway. So the job, if you can put yourself through that and be able to courageously put yourself out there and talk about it, that's one thing, but it's their job to listen. So, yeah, that's all I'll say about that.
So following up with that, Chris Clooney, for those who may not know or who are on the call, He is also a Davidson alum. So being a man of color, having experienced some of the same things that some of the athletes who come to him, who share those stories, is important. Which brings me to a question that was asked about the lack of alumni being hired to come back for jobs at Davidson. I know personally, I applied for about 4 jobs at Davidson and did not get any of those jobs. And so I know there are other faculty, other alumni who have applied for jobs as well at Davidson, either as staff or as faculty, and who have not. But I do know that we do have a lot of current alumni who are starting to see the shift in employment at Davidson. So that's awesome that that's being recognized now as well. So I think it's very important. It just goes back to what Jaylen was saying about having faculty of color, staff of color, particularly those who are Davidson alum who've been through the experience. Not only can they process with current students, but they can be helpful in terms of recruiting and retaining those students as well. So I think that's very important. Davidson is focused on recruiting and retaining the best and the brightest, as well as those who are conscious and who are going to be change makers. Then that's one of the ways to do it, is to look at the faculty look at the alumni that you've produced. Davidson produces some really awesome faculty, but now it's time for Davidson to also say, well, how can we bring them back into the discussion as a part of this campus? How can we create that reconciliation? How can we start that restoration in terms of bringing them to this campus that may have caused some hurt and some harm, but how can we help them kind of disrupt that for other students by being a part of this institution, and help us in a way as well by sharing their experiences? So next question, some of the panelists that we haven't heard from, if there's a question that you want to address that you see that resonates with you, please feel free to go ahead and grab one.
I guess one question there are a couple of questions that I wanted to shout out were just about the makeup of the board of trustees, which I know has been an issue that has been repeated time and time again, but this is just reading from the current board of trustees bylaws. The nominating committee shall ensure that at least 80% of all elected trustees are active members of a Christian church. And then within that, 25% have to be Presbyterian, which is, overwhelmingly white denomination. And I mean, to me, and we've had these discussions in, I think, all of Professor Bailey's classes, that's just a cap. I mean, to me, that's a cap on diversity on the board, like plain and simple. And getting, I don't know, I can't provide solutions for how we can lobby the board to change that. To me, that's almost like, lobbying Congress to impose term limits on itself or something. But that, I think, is in terms of where power also lies at the school and making these institutional changes, getting rid of that quota, I think, would go a long way. So I just wanted to acknowledge, I saw a couple questions earlier on about the board makeup.
That's cool. But yes, and that we are actually going to start to actually wrap up now. Well, yes, and so, and for sort of any sort of panelists right now. Well, yes, and are there any sort of last words that you actually wanted to add? And also sort of what else did you need the Davidson family at least to hear or know about? Then we just wrap it up that way.
I want to say something really quickly, and then I'll let everyone else talk. I apologize. But I saw some things about the town of Davidson. There is a really awesome pocket of people in the town of Davidson. Truthfully, when I come back to Davidson, I'm in the community more than I'm on campus. People say, "Oh my gosh, I haven't seen you." That's because I haven't come across the tracks, but I'm in Davidson all the time. Because I can still go there for events on campus, and they say, "Well, we'll pay for you a hotel." Oh, no, I'll stay right across the street because I know I'll wake up to Sunday morning breakfast. I know I'll come back to Sunday dinner, right? So I still have family, and I've been gone from Davidson since 2004. 16 years of I could take my dog there for them to watch my dog. Like, it's all kinds of stuff that the pocket of awesome Black people in Davidson who won't look at you sideways, Maurice, but who will welcome you in with open arms. They'll open their door, say hello, let you drive their car. Whatever they can do to help you feel welcomed, they are willing to do it. I know that for a fact. I don't know why there is a perspective of the community members at Davidson, the community in Davidson, and I don't know why some of the people on the other side of the tracks look at us as if we don't belong on that side. So you shouldn't have to go over to across the tracks to seek refuge. You should be able to live and thrive wherever you care to in that community. If it is hard for you, again, I do recommend just reaching out. It's an awesome pocket of people at Davidson who, even right now, there are plenty of students who normally they've been kind of taught to finish at North Meck High School and come back to Davidson and work. There are about 10 youth right now in Davidson from the time I was there who now have bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, who've gone on, and I still keep in touch regularly with them, but they began to see more than just graduating from North Meck and going to clean up at Davidson, or going to cook at Davidson, or going to work in the laundry room, or to work in facilities. Nothing wrong with that. But again, it gave them a chance to aspire for greatness. And so I think if Davidson works a little bit better with reaching out, not just outreach, but reaching out to that prize, that gem of a community that they have across the tracks, it would bridge so many gaps, because then you would learn the history of the town of Davidson. You would learn about Rayford. You would learn about Mr. Kearns, Damon Kearns, who was shot and killed by a police officer, which caused a distrust in the community. You would hear all these stories from these awesome people in Davidson. And my dissertation was actually about how I was history major, Ethan and Addie, yay, about how the more things change, the more they remain the same, and how there was the all-Black high school in Huntersville that a lot of people attended, and when they did this integration, a lot of the stability, the care, the compassion was taken from or stripped, so to speak, and then some of the curriculum was also changed as well, and so some of the sense of community was lost. And Davidson, the Black community, began to formulate their own sense of community in a way and create their own bubble, because other pockets of Davidson were creating their bubbles as well. So I think if Davidson works with just bridging that gap between the campus and the community, and I'm not just saying walk to Walgreens, what I'm saying is actually truly being intentional about doing things with the community, community outreach, such as not getting rid of the GED program. That would have been awesome for a lot of the residents there who were looking at getting GEDs, not having to go all the way to Charlotte to do that. So again, there's a rich history at Davidson, and if we know that history, I think we will not be bound to repeat it. So I just wanted to go ahead and say that. Sorry, but I have to put that tidbit in about that's my family across the tracks.
I want to take a second to thank all of our panelists for this evening, for not just giving an hour and a half, but really close to 2 hours tonight. One of the things that Ike Bailey said when he reached out to all of us was, this is a step. It is not the final step. And I really appreciate your honesty, your vulnerability, and this is not the final. This is not the final conversation. Ike, I'm going to kick that over to you.
Yes, and again, and just to thank you to each of these panelists. Yes, and because yes, I want to stress again that your voice matters a hell of a lot, and it is going to take all of us to at least to actually try to keep on chipping away at this. And also, and again, that this is just a step. And then that we sort of already actually have sort of at least actually buy-in from sort of at least actually from sort of Dr. Quillen, etc. Just to actually keep pushing this forward, and also to actually deal with more practical yes, in terms of steps going forward and solutions. Yes, and so yes, and then that that is on the table, and sort of actually will be happening, and also sort of yes, and also sort of even right now, yes, in terms of that, like we actually have the sort of African Studies Department, STRIDE, et cetera, like, and also the sort of anti-racism campaign that's going on. Like, which are things that you can like actually try to, this like actually learn about more and like support right now. Yet, but again, at least for me, just to like actually wrap it up, is that this is a hard issue. Like, which means that like there like actually will be days that like we will feel beat down, and also that there sort of actually will be missteps and misunderstandings. Yes, but for Davidson, I'm gonna yes, and then that if we really are Davidson, and that's supposed to be excellence, yes, and then that like we sort of like actually cannot stop, at least like until like we are also excellent on this issue, not just average. And so yes, and so and that at least with that, like I sort of like actually just want to like actually just to like thank you guys again for like actually sort of like listening, like, and also sort of like actually just trying to figure out how like ways like in your own life that you can like actually start pushing it forward as well. But thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Someone just wrote in, and I'm going to read this out. Thank you for calling us out. Thank you for asking us for accountability. I'm sorry you've had to ask for it so many times. And this conversation will continue. Thank you for your time tonight. Appreciate it.
Good night. Thank you.